My family pranked my girlfriend on Christmas by making a dark humor joke about her biggest insecurity, and she is now furious with me. I have a girlfriend who is absolutely beautiful, but she does have a large and rather ugly facial scar. My family often jokes about it, calling her Joker or whatever, as they have a super dark sense of humor. It bothers my girlfriend, and she says it doesn't feel like a joke, it feels like she's being insulted under the pretense of it being dark humor. Even though I explain it's just how they are and they don't mean any harm, she doesn't really want to be around them. This year, I told her it was really important to me we spend Christmas with my family. She resisted at first, but after some urging from me she gave in. She said I absolutely could not excuse their behavior if they made a rude comment about her though. We got there and it was fine for a while. Then my mom and sister broke out their matching ugly sweaters, that had my girlfriend's face all over it. The reason it had my girlfriend's face was because I had set this prank up for a while. For the last month, I had been secretly taking pictures of my girlfriend while she shopped or while she was not aware of it, pictures specifically with her scar, and sending them to my mom so she could print them onto Christmas sweaters. My mom and sister both laughed, saying my mom made them and it was just a joke. My dad thought it was hilarious, I even chuckled a little. My girlfriend looked at me, and when I said they were just being ironic, she shook her head, got up and left. Didn't say anything to anyone, just took her car and left. I called her several times and she didn't answer. The only text I received was "you need to find your own way home." That ticked me off, and I called her a couple more times. The whole time, my mom is upset because it was just a joke and she didn't realize my girlfriend was going to overreact like that. My sister agreed it was just a joke and my girlfriend was being a baby about it. I had another fight with my girlfriend when I finally got home and she said I was an a-hole. Show asked me how they even had sewage pictures and asked me if it was me. I admitted it to her and all hell broke loose. She started crying. In between sobs, she said it let them treat her badly and was trying to make it her fault when it was my family who was acting badly. I said it was just a joke and that she was overreacting. She asked how it was supposed to be a joke. I said that was just their sense of humor and I was just in on the joke. I said I was sorry she was offended by the joke, but she ruined the whole day with her reaction. She said that no, them realizing she wasn't going to take their bullcrap anymore ruined the day. We aren't speaking currently, but when a cousin called to wish me a Merry Christmas and asked how the day when I mentioned what happened and he straight up called me an a-hole for doing that to her. I don't really think I've done anything though. My psycho ex-wife is demanding I raise the child of another man and my family are on her side. I married my ex-wife 20 years ago. She was a bit of a nutcase, but when I was young I was kind of attracted to girls with mental health issues, so I put up with her bullcrap. At that time, we were both on the fence about having kids. I knew since college that I wanted to retire early, and my dream of having financial freedom was what really made me realize that kids didn't fit into the life I wanted. I was trying to find the right time to talk with her about it, but over the next few weeks, she started dropping hints that she wanted kids. She started showing me photos of her friends' kids, commenting on our nieces and nephews, lied to me about being pregnant as a joke to gauge my reaction, and even bought me a book on the joys of fatherhood that she thought I'd find interesting. I sat her down and asked her if she wanted kids, and she admitted that over the years she had grown to want a family. We had a conversation about it and I realized that neither one of us was going to change our minds. I didn't want to keep her from what she wanted in life, so I brought up divorce. She really didn't want a divorce, and kept trying to get me to want kids, but I stuck to what I wanted and we ended up separating. I obviously still loved her, but that's why I wanted to divorce. We were still young and she could find someone to have the family she wants with. I didn't want her to resent for forcing my life choices onto her. Even after I filed for divorce, she still didn't agree with me and dragged it out as long as she could, so the divorce took almost 2 years. Through with the whole process she tried playing every dirty mental Tarek in the book, from gaslighting to amazing spontaneous intimacy after which he would tell me it's a shame I would never experience it again. Stuff like that. But the divorce was finally done. I dated over the years, but never really found someone that I could see myself sharing the rest of my life with until I met my now fiancé 4 years ago. Apparently, my ex-wife struggled with dating as well and hasn't remarried yet. She has a son, but the kid's dad isn't in the picture. She recently reached out to me and asked if we could meet to catch up. I talked with my fiancé about it and she thought it'd be a great way to clear up any bad blood between us, so I agreed to meet up with her for coffee. Things seemed to be going well until she brought up her son. She asked me if I was willing to be a part of his life as a masculine influence, and I told her I was glad that she was able to have a child, but that it still wasn't something I was interested in. She tried to change my mind by saying that we could be a family again. She kept trying to convince me, and I kept trying to change the subject. I admit I got frustrated because things weren't going as I hoped they would, and I told her that I was happy with my fiancé and that I was not interested in her. She started to insult my fiancé, calling her the N-word. Once she said that, it took every part of me not to reach across the table and schlap, but I composed myself and left. You see, when I agreed to meet with her, it never even occurred to me that she might want to get back together considering how long it's been. However, after we met up, she kept messaging me provocative stuff, and I blocked her after she sent me a picture of her unclothed, and I don't plan on talking with her again. I was talking with my sister and her husband about it, and they said that while I'm totally right for rejecting her now, that it was an a-hole move on my part to divorce her in the first place and that I was now being an a-hole again by not being a part of her kid's life. I was gobsmacked. They were taking the side of my ex who was racist towards my fiancé. They both agreed that my ex was right for wanting to work it out. They said it's my fault that her child doesn't have a father and that if I had given having kids a chance, I would have changed my mind. I just don't agree that kids are something one should compromise on. I just don't see how it's possible for it to not be a bad situation for everyone involved that breeds resentment. A selfish police officer destroyed my sense of self-worth because an entitled Karen accused me of stealing from her without any proof. As a homeless man, I know I should be used to being treated badly by now, but I'm not, and every time it hurts just as much as the first time. So yesterday I got caught in the terrible rain, so all my clothing was soaking wet. I slept in wet clothes while shivering all night. Now it's today, and I know I have to get my clothing dry because it's going below freezing tonight. I took the opportunity to go to the laundromat to wash and dry my belongings with the little bit of spare change I have left. Well, by the door of the laundromat, there's this fellow older homeless man who sits outside the laundromat daily. I have spoken to him several times, and we spoke today too. He looked very hungry, so I gave him one of my 2 bologna sandwiches, and we sat and ate together. Trust me when I say bologna on bread when you're homeless is a feast. While we were eating, a pompous and plump woman walked into the laundromat, then right out shortly after. The other man left after eating, and I went in to dry my stuff. I waited for 45 minutes in the dryer. I'm sitting in the corner, charging my phone, waiting for my stuff to be dry. I remember it clearly, there were 14 minutes left on the dryer. The door opens, and in walks a cop that I saw earlier standing outside, talking to his partner. Visibly mad, she was pointing at me and raising her voice. She was outside, and I couldn't hear what she was saying. The cop walked in and was an a-hole. He told me to bring out my ID. I asked what's going on, and I was told to do as I'm told. I said no, asking what I've done. I'm just waiting for my stuff to dry. The Karen outside apparently had her laundry, which she left to wash and dry, stolen, and guess who she blamed for the theft? Yep, this homeless guy. The cop told me, when we find her stuff on you, you're going to jail, you worthless scum. Worthless scum. I did start to get a bit mad. I said, forget that, look, I ain't got anything on me. I dumped my big green bag upside down and took everything out, and out fell a donut I had wrapped and was saving for later. I was really excited to eat this donut. Anyway, when everything fell out I told the cop to go ahead, arrest me. I haven't done anything besides my laundry. He told me that if I know where it is, I better tell him now, or it won't end well for me. I said I did not know, so he stomped on my donut and totally squished it into the floor. He went outside to the Karen who was still out there jumping up and down, causing a huge scene. After, I took my stuff out of the dryer. The cops came in again with Karen to go through my clothing to make sure none of it's hers. I felt totally violated as they laughed looking at my clothes with rips and tears in them. But that's it. I know I should be used to this treatment now, but it still hurts. My wife deliberately tried to violently unalive our son. I stood by and watched her do it. So my son was very, very troubled. From the day we brought him home from the hospital, he was miserable. He cried for 13 months straight. I'm not exaggerating, 13 months without a break. He cried until he had no voice left and kept crying. You could see his little face scrunched up and no sound coming out, totally hoarse. There were times he would literally be crying in his sleep. I've never seen or heard of any other kid able to do that. We brought him to doctors, specialists, tried changing his diet, held him and rocked him, toys, swaddling music, mobiles, everything we could think of. Nothing worked. 13 months of grating and grinding, no sleep, hell. Once he got over the crying stage, we thought we were out of the woods. But it quickly became clear that for some unknown reason, he was just angry at being alive. I never saw that kid have a genuine, joyous smile once in the time I knew him. I saw him grin a vicious, horrible grin many times, taking a perverse pleasure from causing pain or suffering or breaking a rule, but a smile from real pleasure at something nice? Not once. He had no interest in anything positive, he was fueled by hate, and everything he did was bent toward that. As soon as he could walk, his mission in life was to destroy things. He would break or try to break anything that came in his range, smash it, chew it, throw it in the toilet, whatever he could. After a while he figured out how to get his diaper off and took great pleasure in pooping and peeing anywhere he could. After a while he figured out he could hide it, and started peeing and poop in places we wouldn't find right away, grinding it into carpets, making it even more of a problem to clean and making the house stink. When he got older, ages 9 to 15, he would pee and poop in our bed, until we got a lock on our door and he wasn't able to get in anymore. Then he'd just take a dump in the hallway in front of our room. That biological warfare started around at 2.5 years old and he never grew out of it. As he grew older, he became more and more unmanageable. He would bite, kick, scream, scratch and spit at anyone trying to do anything with him. He was kicked out of school twice before he was 9, then let him back in and then kicked him out for good. He had to change schools. The next one put him in a special class that kept him away from the other students. We had to install a door and lock on the kitchen because he would steal knives and use them to gouge the walls and furniture or chase people with them. When he was 10, he stabbed me pretty good in the hip and butt. I still have the scars. As he grew older, he grew darker. He moved into setting things on fire, and tormenting local animals. There was a stray dog that hung out around the park near our house. My son stabbed it in one eye with a barbecue fork. He would dip cats' tails in gasoline and... you know what? He became a violent, stinking, vicious beast that lived in our house. We couldn't do anything with him. He saw a psychiatrist twice a week, and had God knows how many different medications prescribed to him over the years. Nothing worked. Therapy didn't work. Meds didn't work. Nothing worked. He was like a poison cloud of hate and fury lashing out at anything in his reach. When my son was 16, my wife got pregnant again. I can't tell you how different our reaction was. Instead of joy, we felt horror. This pregnancy had not been planned, and we really were at a loss over what to do. My son had been such an unending nightmare for 16 years, we couldn't take the idea of starting again from the beginning. We talked a lot about terminating, but access to termination was not as easy in those days as it is now, and my wife was very against it. We talked about many options. In the end, we decided that my wife would have the baby, and if it turned out evil we would put it up for adoption. We knew we just couldn't do it again with another child like our son. We had a daughter. She was normal. Suddenly we saw what our lives should have been like the whole time, how things would have been had our son not been himself. She laughed at things. She breastfed without biting. After 4 months she was sleeping through the night. She was happy. She was normal. I can't describe the relief and happiness that we both felt, I don't have the words for it. This where I believe I may have started really pulling back from my son. Up until that time, whatever mistakes I made, I had always tried to do the best for my son, I am convinced of that. I tried to help him and love him and care for him, I really tried. But when my daughter was born, my wife and I both instinctively just turned toward her. She became our focus, not from malice, but just because she was so much easier. She was so happy and sweet, every moment we were with her was like magic. I understand this was wrong, but we honestly couldn't help it. I don't have a better explanation than that. My son hadn't given a crap about my wife being pregnant, I honestly don't know if he really understood it, but when we brought our daughter home he started acting out even more. I didn't think it was possible, but he took it up another notch. At this time he was 17, and we were having blowout screaming matches daily. Usually after we fought, he would storm out of the house and disappear for hours at a time, or come back the next morning. It was a relief. I started to actually look forward to our fights because it would get him away from us for a while. After the birth of our daughter, my relationship with my son was almost entirely gone, our only real interactions were screaming at each other. My wife was even worse with him, she just had nothing left. By that time, if our son even came into the same room as her, she would just stop whatever she was doing and start screaming, "Get the F away from me. Get away. Get the F out." Until he left. He started spending more and more time out of the house, which was a blessing for us. I have no idea what he got up to out in the world, but we were just happy it wasn't being inflicted on us. As a consequence of our son's behavior, we had invested heavily in locks around our house. All of the cheap, thin interior doors in our home had been replaced with thick, dense wood doors that couldn't be kicked through, equipped with keyed locks that my wife and I carried keys to. I know it sounds extreme, but locks and heavy doors were the best way we had found to create safe spaces from him. And again, before I am inundated with messages, I was not locking my son in rooms like a prisoner, he had free reign of the house and could come and go as he pleased. My wife and I would lock ourselves in rooms to protect ourselves from him. If anything, we were the prisoners in our own home. On the day in question, I had fought with my son in the morning and he had left the house in a rage. My wife and I were enjoying some peace and quiet in the kitchen while our daughter napped in our bedroom. And then my daughter began crying. Any parent who has young children can tell you, you get used to your child's cries and you can tell after a while what they need. They cry differently if they are hungry, or need changing, or are just restless and want to be held. Babies can communicate pretty well before they can speak. This cry was none of those things. This cry was terror. The second we heard it, my wife and I were both up out of our chairs and running to the room. The door was locked, of course, and it took a few seconds to get the right key and get it open. My son was in the room. We lived in a bungalow, and our son had climbed in the window to get to her. He was standing over her crib with a weapon in his hand. I have no idea where he got it. I think he may have stolen it from one of our neighbors' houses. He had broken her skin twice already, once in the belly area and once on her arm. I could see her wounded. When I entered the room, he was dragging the back of the weapon down her face, not inflicting damage, almost tickling her with it, teasing her while she screamed. He looked up at us and smiled. Before I knew what I was doing, I was already moving, running to put myself between them. I didn't think about it, I just moved instinctively. Even with that, my wife got there faster. It was like a movie on fast forward. She got to our son and bashed his hand away, knocking the knife across the room, and then shoved him with her whole body weight, so hard that he flew away from the crib and bounced off the wall. I picked up my daughter and held her while my wife screamed us. I could see her shaking, almost convulsing. I can remember the smell of the room, the sound of my daughter screaming and wailing. The look on my son's face as he stood there. Just nothing. Blank, there was nothing in his eyes, no emotion. He looked like an alien to me. I watched my wife take a step toward him. I could have reached out and stopped her, but I didn't. She stepped forward again, very close to him. I could have stopped her again. But I didn't. She waited, looking at him for maybe 3 to 5 seconds without moving. And then she punched him in the face.
My awful coworker trauma dumps all the time about her horrible life. When I ignored her, she threatened to unalive herself because of me. My coworker is a must-be-nice type of person. What I mean by that is that she's got a past so bad, that when she first told me about it, I honestly thought she had gotten it from some Law and Order Special Victims Unit episode. She's been through domestic abuse, intimate assault/rope, dead parents, cutting, suicide attempt, insomnia, and has an abusive roommate that tells her to unalive herself all the time. At first I sympathized with her because a person should never have to go through all of that. I don't blame her for any of this, and I usually do not get visibly mad or tell her about my annoyance. I even comforted her about it and was basically her personal therapist for a while. But things have gotten really uncomfortable around her. For example, every time I mention my mother, she tells me, "Well, be happy because my mom's dead." If I say something about how good I slept, she says, "I couldn't sleep at all because of my nightmares of the rope and insomnia." If I mention how hungry I am, she says, well, I haven't eaten in 3 days. It always feels like she's trying to one-up me and no one can have problems beside her. She always makes things about herself and I can't stand it. Besides, no one needs to hear all that tragic stuff all the time. Every time she brings any of that up, the room gets really quiet and awkward. I swear you could hear crickets chirping in there. She always laughs like something's funny, too. She's usually very fun to be around, but she can never go a day without mentioning her trauma. She especially loves trauma dumping during lunch. It's always, my mom used to make me lunch, but she's dead now, or I wish I could eat lunch with my mom, but I can't because she's dead. I get it. Well, today, I made the terrible mistake of mentioning how I was excited for Christmas, and if she was too. Instead of a normal response, I hate the holidays because my mom's dead and I can't spend it with her. I got really annoyed because she always manages to ruin the mood. This was the first time I actually got visibly annoyed, and now she thinks I'm mad because she doesn't like Christmas. She's so painfully unaware that she couldn't even tell the reason I was annoyed at her. I've been avoiding her ever since, and every time she tries to talk to me, I just tell her I'm busy. So, she decided to confront me, in the worst way possible. She basically told me that ignoring her was making her cut again because I triggered her trauma with the way I look at her, angry and annoyed. Then she told me that if I wanted her to end her life I should just tell her because I was making her feel guilty for just living. I blew up. I told her there was something wrong with her and she was so annoying. I told her I couldn't stand talking to her anymore because she always brought up her trauma one way or another. She immediately started crying and said that if she ended her life, it would be my fault. I told her this was exactly the reason why I was starting to hate her. She can't just guilt trip me like that, and that's bad for my mental health too. Does she honestly think I want to live with the fact that she might unalive herself because of me? I told her she's so selfish and we couldn't be friends after this. The next day, people were talking about our screaming match and how she didn't show up for work today or was answering any calls. Honestly, I didn't know what to think. If she actually tried something, it would be my fault. But on the other hand, I do think she should have been called out on her behavior a long time ago, and she crossed the line by guilt-tripping me that day. My best friend made me her maid of honor and used me to pay for her wedding. Then she replaced me with her awful sister-in-law, so I refused to attend her wedding. My best friend recently got engaged and she asked me to be her maid of honor. I was so incredibly happy, especially since we've been inseparable since kindergarten. I was going to take my duties as her maid of honor seriously and make her big day unforgettable. I spent nearly $700 on her bachelorette party, buying cute outfits for everyone and renting a party bus with all-you-can-drink drinks. The other girls pitched in, but I'm the most financially stable, so the majority fell on me. I helped plan the wedding of her dreams, right down to contacting the vendors and setting dates when she was too busy. What I'm trying to say is that I did a lot for her. Then, 2 weeks before the wedding, my best friend asked me to step down and said that her future sister-in-law would be taking the role of maid of honor. I didn't understand why, because she isn't close with her sister-in-law and would complain about her all the time. I was pissed though, and we got into a huge argument over it. I felt like I was just a bank to her since I paid for everything, and now that she had the wedding of her dreams, she was ready to get rid of me. I said things I wasn't proud of, but I really did feel used. And it didn't help that she called me money hungry when I asked for my money back. I honestly didn't know what would make her rethink her decision because she seemed so happy that I was her maid of honor. But word got around that we had a fight, and since then, I've received texts from our friends, best friend's family, the groom's family, even the sister-in-law telling me that I'm a drama queen who needs to get over herself and that it isn't about me. This has messed me up a lot because everyone is against me, but I do think I have a right to be angry since this situation is so unfair. Was I really in the wrong like everyone says? Update: I met my friend at around 9 a.m. yesterday at a local coffee shop to talk things out. She looked really bad, her hair was super greasy and unkempt, she had really bad eye bags, and she seemed totally exhausted. When I asked her what was wrong, she just apologized. I kept prodding, and it turns out that her in-laws are real pieces of work. Apparently they've been harassing her for nearly 3 years about having her sister-in-law as the maid of honor at the wedding, and when my friend chose me they went ballistic. My friend said she thought she'd be able to handle it until the wedding day, but then mother-in-law threatened to ruin her wedding by wearing a wedding dress, spilling wine on the bride's dress, making inappropriate speeches, etc. unless sister-in-law was the maid of honor. My friend panicked, and that's when she told me I would no longer be maid of honor. She apologized for the money-hungry comment and said that she was just in such an awful place mentally that hearing me mention the money made her really upset. The reason all our friends were attacking me is because they knew about the mother-in-law situation and assumed I knew it too. But my friend had never mentioned anything bad about her family to me, so I was just oblivious the entire time. Had I known, I would have reacted differently, and now I understand why they were being really mean to me. As for the fiancé, he was completely in the dark too. He doesn't have a good relationship with his mother already since she mistreated him for being a boy. She had always wanted a girl, so when she got one, she made her her prized possession, basically the golden child of the family. My friend didn't want to be what destroyed that relationship. When my friend told me all this, I felt awful. I didn't know she was enduring 3 years of harassment because of me. We both apologized to each other and we cried a lot. When the tears stopped, I encouraged her to tell her fiancé because keeping this from him wasn't helping anyone. Besides, if he decided to cut off mother-in-law then, that was his decision, not hers. After talking a lot more about future boundaries, our friendship, and the wedding, I decided I would attend and we'd still be friends. I know my friend didn't handle this in the best way, but I've known her for over 2 decades and she's practically my platonic soulmate. That's not something you should throw away because of this. Days later, I received a text from my friend saying that her fiancé disinvited his mom and practically half the family, including sister-in-law, because of their treatment of my friend and me. She asked if I would be willing to be the maid of honor again and I said yes.
My racist in-laws almost unalived my dog and trashed my house. When I kicked them out, my fiancé took their side and now I want to break up with her. My fiancée Meg and I have been together for 5 years and I thought she was the love of my life, until this happened. We are going to be married soon, so we're in the process of moving her in with me since my home is quite large compared to hers. Because of this, I also agreed to host her family from out of town for Thanksgiving. I'm going to be blunt, I do not like Meg's family. They are all extremely conservative, conspiracy theorist, really racist, a woman's place is in the kitchen types. Meg is very different from them but is close with them. She believes that she can't cut ties with them because they're still family and blood is thicker than water. She hasn't seen them in a year, so I agreed that they could stay at my place for the holiday, because I can usually tolerate them enough. I agreed to Wednesday morning. Meg's parents arrive, and things are fine. That is, until Meg's sister arrived. You see, I have a dog named Lucy. She's my dog, not Meg's. I had her for years before Meg was around and Meg is not a big fan of dogs, although she likes Lucy. I was in the bathroom when the sister pulled into the driveway. Meg's mom called to me and said, "I'm going to let Lucy out front to say hi to sister," to which I explicitly said no, don't do that. She needs to be on a leash and I should handle her. Give me a minute and I can come help, but leave her inside. I know she heard me because she said okay. 2 minutes later, Meg came screaming saying that her mom let Lucy outside and she ran away down the street. I ran out of the house and got in my car to drive after her, but I could never find her. I drove all around my neighborhood and adjacent neighborhoods trying to find her all day, but I just couldn't. She had my number on her collar, but I was terrified she was gone or got hit by a car or something. Meg drove around in her car some throughout the day too, but her parents and sister did nothing. They just spent the day partying at my house and making a mess. I told them to clean up, but I just woke up to a dirty house and broken things everywhere. I couldn't be bothered with that because Lucy was still missing. I resumed the search in the morning on Thursday, Thanksgiving Day. Later that afternoon, I got a call in the afternoon that someone found Lucy. I went and got her and she was a mess. She had several bite marks and was bleeding in several places. I think she got in a fight with a wild animal. I took her to the ER immediately and they patched her up. Luckily, she will pull through, but that process took a long time, so I didn't get home until Thursday night. I was exhausted and basically locked myself in my room with Lucy to watch her. I was really pissed at Meg's family and worst of all, she was taking their side. I never noticed this until today, but whenever I had an argument with her family, she always sided with them. One time, they were being racist towards my friend, calling him every slur in the book, and she told me to drop it because it wasn't a big deal. I couldn't believe I just let that go, and it was bad that them almost unaliving my dog was my last straw when it should have been that. If things weren't bad enough already, Meg's dad knocked on my door to tell me to be a man, that the dog was back, and it was just a stupid dog, so who cares? I told them all to leave right now. Meg was upset and said they didn't have anywhere to go. I said I don't care, but they can't be at my home because their level of disrespect was too much. They're horrible people and I shouldn't have agreed to house them for Thanksgiving. They wouldn't go and insults were thrown my way. They said they never liked me and I didn't deserve to marry Meg. Truthfully, I was rethinking my relationship with Meg after all this. They wouldn't leave until I threatened to call the cops. Meg left with them and texted that it was rude for offering my home and then kicking them out because they made an honest mistake. I never even got an apology for what they put my dog through. What are some rules in life to become more likable? Don't ask awkward questions like, "Oh, so you aren't married yet?" Or "Don't you have kids?" God's sake, it isn't your problem. Don't call someone more than twice continuously. If they don't pick up your call, presume they have something important to attend to. Return money that you have borrowed even before the person that borrowed you remember or ask for it. It shows your integrity and character. Same goes with umbrellas, pens and lunchboxes. Never order the expensive dish on the menu when someone is giving you a lunch/dinner. Don't ask awkward questions like, "Oh, so you aren't married yet?" Or "Don't you have kids?" or "Why didn't you buy a house?" Or "Why don't you buy a car?" For God's sake, it isn't your problem. Always open the door for the person coming behind you. It doesn't matter if it is a guy or a girl, senior or junior. You don't grow small by treating someone well in public. If you take a taxi with a friend and he or she pays now, try paying next time. Respect different shades of opinions. Remember what 6 to you will appear 9 to someone facing you. Besides, second opinion is good for an alternative. 8. Never interrupt people talking. Allow them to pour it out. As they say, hear them all and filter them all. If you tease someone, and they don't seem to enjoy it, stop it and never do it again. It encourages one to do more and it shows how appreciative you are. Say thank you when someone is helping you. Praise publicly. Criticize privately. There's almost never a reason to comment on someone's weight. Just say, "You look fantastic." If they want to talk about losing weight, they will. When someone shows you a photo on their phone, don't swipe left or right. You never know what's next. If a colleague tells you they have a doctor's appointment, don't ask what it's for, just say, "I hope you're okay." Don't put them in the uncomfortable position of having to tell you their personal illness. If they want you to know, they'll do so without your inquisitiveness. Treat the cleaner with the same respect as the CEO. Nobody is impressed at how rude you can treat someone below you, but people will notice if you treat them with respect. If a person is speaking directly to you, staring at your phone is rude. Never give advice until you're asked. When meeting someone after a long time, unless they want to talk about it, don't ask them their eye and salary. Mind your business unless anything involves you directly, just stay out of it. Remove your sunglasses if you are talking to anyone in the street. It is a sign of respect. More so, eye contact is as important as your speech. Never talk about your riches in the midst of the poor. Similarly, don't talk about your children in the midst of the barren. After reading a good message, try to say thanks for the message.